The Master of Suspense. That is the title given to one Alfred Hitchcock, the legendary director who made movies the way he wanted to, when he could, which in this case is Vertigo, a 1958 box office disaster that turned into what some call a masterpiece. But was it a masterpiece, or is it rose-tinted glasses? This is Last Page. Issue 22 of Last Page. I am your humble host, Maverick King, joined today by Rembo, and across the oceans of the internet, Jason Cedars, and making his glorious return to our little screens, Barata Zach Glenn of Idiot Talk, a Radiohead podcast. Just started its second season. Heavily recommend you check it out. Available wherever you get your podcasts. Gentlemen, what a glorious day this is. We are here to talk about Vertigo, a movie that is hailed as Hitchcock's best. If you are not familiar with Alfred Hitchcock, he made movies going back to the silent era, and then has made movies that are a pantheon of greatness. From everything, my personal favorite of his, North by Northwest with Cary Grant, an amazing, very iconic adventure movie with lots of suspense and thriller elements. He made Rear Window, an incredible masterpiece. I would consider that maybe perhaps his masterpiece. He made Psycho, one of the most legendary horror movies of all time. But let's talk about this one. One of the reasons I want to talk about this one is because I know, based on recent conversations, Remy doesn't like horror movies. This isn't a horror movie. This is a thriller. But you don't like movies that don't make you feel good, that leave you feeling bleh. And this, I know, is one of those movies, whereas Zach loves this movie. So I am very excited to hear everyone's chime in. I don't know what Jason thinks about the movie, so I'm very curious what he has to think. But let's start off with the tagline of the movie, or the plot summary. On IMDb, this movie came out in May of 1958. A former San Francisco police detective juggles wrestling with his personal demons and becoming obsessed with the hauntingly beautiful woman he has been hired to trail, who may be deeply disturbed. It stars James Stewart, as the police detective, and Kim Novak plays the blonde bombshell. And basically, from early on in this movie, it is established that he has vertigo. He has acrophobia, a fear of heights or looking down and getting vertigo. And it takes him off the force, basically. And then a former friend of his hires him to trail his wife because he thinks his wife is being haunted by a dead person. So that is kind of the general plot of the movie. Remy, you just watched this movie. Did it get any better? This being your second time you watched it.
No,
Did you like this movie?
This is my
anymore?
first time actually watching it all the way through.
Oh,
I've only seen a couple scenes.
Okay.
Oh, did you know the ending?
No, I didn't know anything about it.
All right. Well,
oh wow.
I for some reason in my head I had a misremembering of him falling to his death. So I thought the movie.
Well, spoilers again. Let's wait on the spoilers. We'll
But
get
that's
to spoilers.
how it happened.
He does fall, but
He
not
does fall
in the very beginning of the movie.
Yes.
That's not a spoiler.
That is not okay. So yes, we will because there's lots of twists and turns of this movie. But yes, go ahead. The floor is yours. How did you feel about watching Vertigo for the first time?
I like the movie. It's not that I hate the movie. There's certain aspects of it that I don't think are as tight as other Hitchcock films. But overall, I did like the very mysterious nature of the movie. I love as with any Hitchcock film. For me, I think the sometimes just the best parts of his movies are how they look, how they are presented. I really love he does such a good job of going from like these wide, really open shots to very tight, very like right on your face, maybe even just a part of your face kind of shots. And it's and you could say this about a lot of aspects of his movies, and just he is ahead of his time. He's doing things that you will get some directors that do that now that are kind of mostly inspired by his type of work. And but yeah, just being, I was going to say, really a leader in the industry early on is very evident in this movie, as with his other movies. But I will say, yeah, I have mixed feelings about things that happen in the movie and how it ends that we'll get to. But overall, it was just nice. We watch some shitty movies and shitty shows here, like Ahsoka. But so watching something really nice is actually is every time I get to watch something where I'm like, oh, this is well made, well thought out. Like it's relieving at this point. So I am not upset that we watched this movie at all, and I did enjoy my time watching it.
Yes, Jason, did you? What viewing number is this for you, roughly?
Very similar to Remy, where I thought I had seen this movie, thought I knew what it was, and I think I had seen certain scenes and stuff. But no, as soon as it started off, I was like, oh, I have no idea what's going on here. And I'm really happy because it really made it for a fun ride without knowing the ending, without really knowing anything about this. Like, I didn't even read the tagline to it. You know, I just went into this completely blind. So it was a really cool mystery thriller. You know, for that aspect, yes, great. Very good as far as the time period, reflecting of the 50s. You know, that was really fun. And then, yeah, of course, Alfred Hitchcock being such a great cinematographer, you know, just as how it looked and everything like that. So, yeah, no, I had actually a really great time with it. I mean, I hate Kim Novak, the character. I was like upset about her and her deception and like how that all kind of played out. So it's for that to invoke this much emotion into me even the next day of still thinking about her and what her role played in the movie. And I'm excited to talk about it. But no, I had a really great time. And yeah, and you're right. It was very refreshing to kind of see just a classic good movie and not to be like something new or like, oh, is this going to suck? You know? And it was, yeah, a great time. Yeah. I really enjoyed the movie.
Yes, Zach, you said before we already watched the movie that you believe it is your favorite Hitchcock movie. Mm-hmm. You just watched it again. Does it hold as your favorite Hitchcock movie? And what are your thoughts about the movie?
I think so. Yeah, it's my favorite. It's difficult because I haven't seen every single Hitchcock movie. I had not seen North by Northwest until fairly recently. And I know that is your favorite, Mav, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was really fun. I think Remy, you really capped off like exactly what some of the things I love about it, just how innovative it is from like what he's doing, like technique wise, like the push pull technique to show Jimmy Stewart's character's fear of heights and vertigo they developed that like while they were shooting it, which is really, really cool. And that's not why I love the movie. I mean, it's like those are only things I've learned about kind of more recently as I've gotten more into like camera operation and just little things like that. You know, it's like there's so much great content online, you know, for people that are experts on it to learn about it. But I think it's always just spoken to me just as a movie, just because of the ambiguity and tension in like Jimmy Stewart's creepy in it, basically, you know, and it's not what you would expect. So it's like I could definitely see why one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, why people didn't embrace the movie in 1958 when it came out, you know, and why it was a commercial failure. And I did not know until very recently that it is surpassed like on some of the lists, like Citizen Kane, as like the greatest movie. Again, none of these are why I love the movie, so I should shut up about all that. I just think it's so cool, the like ambiguity that is created. I know you don't want to spoil the end because we might want to go in sequence, but I really, really like all that kind of stuff. And I love stuff that's open for guided interpretation if there is enough substance there to sort of kind of pull you along. I love the way it looks. I don't know. I would echo everything Rem said as far as like kind of the like main bullet points. But plot wise, I would say I just love the ambiguity and tension and creepiness of it. It's always really spoken to me, I think.
There are, having watched a lot of Hitchcock movies as a kid, there are ones that as a kid instantly that I loved. And there are ones that I did not like.
Yeah.
And this is back when I was, I loved the good guys winning. I love the bad guys losing. Mm-hmm. And I like movies with good happy endings. And movies that were outside of that as a kid, I'm just like, I don't like it. Yeah. But as an adult, I've grown to love and appreciate those movies. And this movie specifically, You go back to, it's such a censored era. You couldn't have any sex, nudity, like great violence. You couldn't have cussing. Like the handcuffs were on, and Hitchcock really was the best at pushing the limits of what you could show in a movie. He has multiple movies where he includes gay characters that you couldn't say that they were gay, but they're very obviously gay. And like he was the guy that was really pushing this. What was that?
Rope has that.
Rope's one. Strangers on a Train is one. North by Northwest is one. So there's different movies. I really love the fact that he really did his best to work despite the restrictions. And this movie, I like this movie. I don't love this movie. The movie is beautiful, 100%. And the restoration, the version that I just watched was I think in 1997, they restored it. And it looks great. One of the things
$2 million. It cost him $2 million to restore it. Can you imagine that? That's nuts.
And the original budget for the movie was $2.5 million. It was $2.5 million. It made about $3.7 million or $3.2 million. And so it was a box office disaster. A lot of people didn't like it because Jimmy Stewart plays this creepy weirdo who's obsessed with I don't want to spoil it yet, but he is obsessed with this woman. And he tries to manipulate her image to fit what he has this idea of what she should be. So, the movie, the opening scene of the movie is an exciting foot chase over rooftops where Jimmy Stewart is tracking down this, criminal, alleged criminal. He wasn't tried or convicted, and we have laws in this country that so maybe he was an innocent man that he was chasing, but I don't know. Anyway, he slips, grabs the ledge, looks down, has vertigo. And his partner is trying to help him get back up. His partner slips and falls down. And then it cuts to a year later. And we're introduced to his friend, who is like 14 years younger than him, but they were like college buddies. How does that work? How did they go to college at the same time? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's like, I want to jump in. Like, that's like one of the hardest parts of this movie is they jump around in time and then they do not tell you like how long time has been in between one scene to another. And where it could be like 6 months to a year or like 5 minutes from one scene to the next. I'm like, okay, how long has this been? You're constantly
asking that. I love how they do that. And it is frustrating, but I really like that element of it. And just real quick, Mav, I just want to say on the rooftop scene, I had never thought this before, but I was like, I feel like The Matrix is kind of a little bit of an homage to that. Anyways, keep going though.
No, that's a good call. So there is two main woman characters in this. One of them is his friend zone
Midge.
Played by Barbara Bel Geddes. So I don't know how to say it.
She looks like a midge.
Yeah, she's a nice friend, and she's like a professional artist, or she's an artist, but she works in the underwear business. And she is inventing the push-up bra.
Yeah, that's such a weird like side story little thing.
It's very interesting. Like, this brassiere that pushes your tits up, and it's like the push-up bra got invented in Vertigo. It's pretty cool. Not as cool as the manzier that was invented in Seinfeld, by the way, or the bro, not the bra. So
that's funny. The manzier.
There's exposition setting up that Jimmy Stewart's been sidelined for like a year, I believe, while he's been recovering from his acrophobia.
The actually opening intro, hold on, how crazy fucking the spirograph trip out session and Jimmy's face coming out, like that intro right there off the bat, I was like, what am I getting myself into? And I need to be on much more drugs to be watching this movie. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I wanted to just jump in on that.
Jimmy Stewart is one of the all-time great actors. Always plays the hero typically, where this, you're introduced to him as a cop, and there's nothing to make you think that he's just not like he's a good guy. He's a cop. He's a detective. His friend, a long lost friend from college, that is a shipyard owner, shipyard builder. Yeah, a successful guy that he comes across him, and he wants to hire Jimmy Stewart to follow his wife, because his wife has been having these strange episodes where she zones off, and her husband believes that Gavin believes that she is being possessed by a dead spirit of someone. And that starts basically the first third of this movie is Jimmy Stewart following her through these different locations in a very iconic representation of San Francisco.
And doing a horrible job of following her. He's like right behind her in the car. Like all she has to do is look around like, that car's been behind me for like 9 blocks now.
He's following her. He's following her like you would follow someone in a fetch quest of like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just keeping just enough distance to keep the quest going. Yeah.
Yeah, Zach. I think one of the things I really like about the movie is just how great it makes San Francisco look.
Yeah.
Time. And San Francisco is a character within this movie. Locations are very iconic. There's a few other movies like Dirty Harry, The Game with Michael Douglas, and there's what's the one that's escaping me?
Bullet?
Yes, thank you. Bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Venom. In
Anyway, Zach, the opening, your thoughts on Jimmy Stewart's introduction as a character, as this cop that's following his wife, and the kind of the first third of the movie where he is following along and trying to figure out what's going on.
I don't know. I love the way you described it so much that there's nothing to tell you that like, oh, this is Jimmy Stewart in a different type of role than we're used to. But I feel like because he's so brilliant and Hitchcock is so brilliant in crafting the film, you do get a sense of unease from the way he's conducting himself, right? And people have phobias. It's very common to have a fear of heights. He has like a traumatic event kind of associated to it. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? But there's just something off about him a little bit. So I think and you're right, like the representation of San Francisco is spectacular. I do think they shot like a third of the film on location, and then some of it was like in LA and some of it was in Paramount. But I do like that. It's really cool. And yeah, it seems to like devolve very quickly to where you're like, he's not really doing his job. It's pretty all subtly through nonverbal clues that he's becoming obsessed with her, I feel like, and in an unhealthy way. And yeah, he's such a great, like, I feel like he's one of the great face actors. Obviously his voice is so distinct, but like another great face actor would be like Michael Keaton, I would say. Like Michael Keaton, really good with his eyebrows and kind of, like makes a lot of faces. And I feel like Jimmy Stewart, in the same way, like Hitchcock will like push in really hard when he wants you to know that like Stewart's feeling something. But yeah, he just tells you so much with his eyes. I don't know. I don't have a ton more to say on it, but like you said, it looks beautiful and something's off. It's not the most dialogue driven movie, especially for Hitchcock, I wouldn't say. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts.
Jason, Jimmy Stewart, your familiarity with him, you've seen him in movies before. How did you like his character in this as a stranger Jimmy Stewart?
I hate to admit that it's probably just A Wonderful Life. I think that's the only Jimmy Stewart movie that I might have seen him in other stuff, but that's what I remember him from. That's the iconic voice, and remember that movie. So no, this is the really like my first kind of take of him, like sitting through a whole movie. So it is funny that this is such his not a normal character, or not how he normally is in movies, which I loved him. He was every scene he's in, he's captivating. Like I said, I was not a fan. I mean, no, Kim Novak does an absolute Kim, right? Yeah, Kim Novak does an absolute incredible job. But as far as characters, yeah, no, I hated her just because of how she was. But him, you immediately jump on his team. You want him to be the good guy and things like that, which, I mean, are we kind of doing spoilerish now, or are we just kind of going scene by scene?
Well, yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie. But yeah, let's try to just stay in a sequential order. We'll get, because there's there's twist halfway through the movie. Yeah, and we'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. It's more of just like he doesn't feel like the good guy or the good ending or any of this kind of thing to this movie. So yeah, just kind of wanted to harp on that as far as his character. But as far as the first third of the movie, I really did enjoy just all the characters getting introduced. I did like Jimmy Stewart and the Midge, the Barbara Bell Geddes, I think is her name. Like, I thought there was like chemistry in that first scene, and it was fun them bouncing off each other, that they were old flames and stuff like that, kind of just like setting that tone for this like other woman in his life. And then the Gavin scene where he's in the boardroom talking with him about his wife, and just it's just such a good introduction to his life and where he is after kind of this accident that happened to him. And yeah, the cane thing and the girdle, you know, and him kind of like transitioning from this. And that's what I talked about earlier, is this, the time frame of this movie is just either so rushed or so drawn out. You know, it's like we go from this rooftop scene to him already being like out of the force and whatever injuries that he sustained, which, so he fell off that roof. Because we don't actually
see. They don't specify. It's just that he's hurt. He's like messed his back up or whatever, so he has to wear a brassiere.
Because I was thrown off by that, because Buddy died when he fell at that height. So Jimmy, I know, is hanging, so he didn't have quite as far of a fall. But did he fall with that? And was that injury that he was sustaining?
He's like 50 years old or whatever. So like something like falling and grabbing like a ledge like that would probably jack your back up.
Oh, okay. So someone else pulled him up, but walking with a cane and everything like that, I felt like I was missing some like crucial scene or some time frame. But quickly now he's leaving the force because of that. And now like kind of starting this next chapter in his life. I felt like they did that well. But yeah, like as far as the time frame of stuff, I was constantly lost, I felt like. Yeah. But yeah, going Ernie's. That's what I wrote down. The Ernie's, this restaurant they go to. How about those walls? The red velvet on absolutely everything in that room. And that was another part of this movie that was so cool, was like the hotel rooms to the even the office room that him and Gavin are talking about, just full of pictures on the wall. These huge like ornate wooden, stuff all over the walls, trimmings and things like that. It's like I found myself like not even paying attention to what they're saying, looking at so much of the rooms and the backgrounds and stuff like that. But yeah, Ernie's like that whole thing with the red room, and like that's when you start to see that obsession, and it's like I think that's what this movie can be kind of like titleized as obsession. It's like his obsession with her is the almost the driving force of this whole movie. And you kind of start to see that, where it's like you mentioned earlier, Zach, where he's not being as like professional. You can see it starting to wane a little bit of his like duties as following her is now a little bit more in his personal interest in that job. But yeah, that was really cool of us starting to get to follow her. Am I jumping ahead too much? Because I think that's when we start.
Like Remy. So Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart.
Yes.
You've seen all the movies, Jason. You got us watch some Jimmy Stewart movies. He is.
After this, I want to see him in different lights now.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously acting of the time. There are, it doesn't translate like perfectly to today in moments. He's very dramatic in certain points, but guy has really good range. I mean, it's a Wonderful Life. He is he
could be funny too.
Oh,
Jimmy Stewart could be really funny.
Hopefully a little bit less womanizing as far as the movies go, and the aggressive kissing. Holy shit, man. There's sometimes I'm like, you are breaking her fucking neck with that kiss.
I once, by the way, just to show you the wide range of appeal of Jimmy Stewart, I once encountered a stripper who was obsessed with Jimmy Stewart. She loved Jimmy Stewart. She saw like all these movies. She saw all the Jimmy Stewart movies that I haven't seen, and I've seen all the ones that she hadn't seen. And it was very interesting, this woman telling me just how much she loves Jim Stewart as this tall, handsome man. And I was like, hey, Jimmy Stewart's got range, man. People love Jimmy Stewart.
Let's unpack that. Why, Crystal, Tiffany Crystal, Sherry, why are you so obsessed with Jimmy Stewart? Does he remind you of your dad?
Where was this conversation?
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
she just put him as a movie star.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Anyway, your thoughts on Jimmy Stewart in this movie?
Definitely do not like him. He is creepy and weird from the get-go. It's creepy that he has an ex-fiance girlfriend that's 100 years younger than him, but he's still seeing her. Like, what kind of friends? Who's friends with an ex-fiance?
They were only engaged for 3 weeks or something like that.
We're related. We're related to like someone that is friendly with like the new husband of his ex-wife. So my point is that can't happen. It's not that much of a gap. Like the age doesn't make any sense. Jimmy Stewart's way older than these women that he's associating with. The age doesn't make any sense. Like, but like as far as him being friends, like Yeah, like in San Francisco of all places, a lot of strange stuff goes down in San Francisco.
Clearly. But yeah, so I think in comparison, it is very different, and Jimmy obviously has great range and capabilities, even though he he uses the same sort. I mean, well, golly gee, like he does that same sort of, I don't even know what to call that, but he does that. He has the same sort of speech in all of his movies, so he doesn't have that great of what range when it comes to like how he talks. He talks the same, like his character. He's like Sean Connery. Sean Connery could be a German sub-commander and he will still have a Scottish accent. He'll be a Muslim and he'll still have a Scottish accent. Jimmy Stewart is wherever he's from, which is Midwest, I would assume. Yeah. That is the same. So other than that, the man shows great range and capability of being creepy, lovable, funny, is scary, and all those things. So he is great at that, and I do appreciate his ability to do that in this movie, because by the end of it, I'm just like so gross and creepy, and hoping that he dies. And yeah, I have a couple of questions. I got questions that we got to go through over the plot. And like what I think might be a plot hole, but it's my first time watching it, so if I need it to be explained, when he's tailing her and she disappears in the hotel, she goes up to that kind of rink-a-dink hotel, and she's up. He sees her. She drives in. She's up in the room. He goes in, and she's gone.
Right. So that there is like, we'll get to that in a minute, because that is a part of the whole twist of the movie.
Yes.
I believe that is not explained like definitively. You don't get a definitive answer from the movie, but that is a part, I believe, of the twist. Zach, you're concurring?
No, I totally agree. I think that like something like The Shining or something, I feel like the continuity errors or the plot holes are there to kind of fuck with you. And I feel like in this one, you'll notice that like the plot holes, like what you just pointed out, Rem, like they usually do correlate to his vertigo or his fear of heights, or it'll be somebody in a place high above him or high below him. But just to go back really, really quick to something you said, Jason, that I love so much, is like the set design of the bar that they're in. That I want to live in that bar. It's so damn cozy. But I love what you were saying about like how like you're kind of just tripping out on the aesthetics of it. I feel like the score does the same thing for me too. And Bernard Herrmann does the score. And I think it was also what you were saying, Jason, like before you were talking about the bar, that like the unhealthy obsession. And in that way, I feel like it reminds me a lot of Taxi Driver, which Bernard Herrmann also did the music for. And the visuals are really strong. So I don't mean to like completely deviate us, but that just occurred to me when you're saying, I was like, I love, and Taxi Driver, what, 16 years later after this? Yeah.
677?
Yeah, 60s.
Taxi Driver was 70s.
Taxi Driver 70s. I think it's 77.
Oh, 70s? Oh.
Yeah. So 19 years later. So, and that was Bernard Herrmann's last film too, as far as scoring it. So I just wanted to say, I just love the aesthetics, whether they're visual or audio, that kind of drive, and you can kind of see in other films. But Matt, please take it away. I know that was a little bit of a detour.
Well, the character, the other main character of this is Kim Novak playing his wife's name?
Madeline.
So Madeline, she plays the wife Madeline, who's oblivious,
she's great,
or seemingly oblivious to James Stewart's stalking of her. And Kim Novak, when I watched this, I was like, "Damn, Kim Novak is dead." Woo! This was a very.
Did you know that she was not going to play?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, Avira, I forget the other movie star, but she was under contract with Hitchcock and with the studio, and they were like shooting, and she got pregnant, so she couldn't. So Kim Novak was cast kind of a Hicks in like Aliens type deal, where it was like 2 weeks before, and she crushes it because James Remar was going to play Hicks, and then Michael Biehn ended up playing him with only 2 days, I think, to learn the script. So yeah, she had a very, very limited time, and the way she inhabits this character is so impressive. She feels really lived in, and she's so great. I mean, Jason, I know you said you despised her, but that means she did a great job, right? So I just thought that was
But
cool.
I think the whole despise her thing. There's nothing other than what you learn about her later. There's nothing on screen. She's not despisable on screen. She's not like this, like, oh, she's such a bad, like, oh, she's the way she talks. It's very interesting. This movie is a parallel to Alfred Hitchcock himself because we are introduced to Kim Novak, and she is this blonde bombshell who talks in this very film noir, like, weird way when she finally meets Jimmy Stewart and they're talking. She jumps off. He follows her long enough. Eventually, she jumps into the bay, San Francisco, right with the Golden Gate Bridge right behind her. She just jumps. She doesn't jump off the bridge, which if she wanted to kill herself, that would have been a move. She just jumps off like a few feet into the water. Jimmy Stewart rescues her. But the way she talks and the way everything about her is very much, and Alfred Hitchcock apparently told her exactly how to talk. Like, this is exactly how I want you to talk. This is exactly how I want you to say the line, which most actors would lose their mind if you try to tell them like exactly how to act in a scene, because you're not acting, you're just reciting. But apparently that's how Hitchcock wanted her, because she was not his first choice to play the character. And apparently Hitchcock, after the movie, said, like, oh, I miscast her. She shouldn't have been, Kim Novak should not have played the character. But I disagree. I think Kim Novak was excellent for what her character is in the first half of this movie and what the character is in the second half of this movie.
He said the same thing about Jimmy Stewart. This was their last collaboration. He kind of blamed the failure on the casting, but I feel like you were throwing to Remy, but I just thought that was interesting.
I mean, you got nobody else to blame but yourself, Alfie. But, I mean, that's your guy. You already made other movies with him, so it's not to pretend like, I guess you just weren't right for the role. Maybe you just didn't direct it well enough. But my thought is, sorry, this is the exact.
Oh, just Kim Novak as the character. We'll get to
and you never really finished with Jimmy Stewart either. Yeah, you were asking about plot holes if you wanted to kind of wrap that up too.
Well, I mean, that wasn't the first one. Other than, again, this man is out of his league in every relationship he's ever been a part of on screen. Like even though she's made to look more homely, his Midge is still out of his league by a lot. And so for then him to also like be seducing this girl and for her to fall for him is so unbelievable. He's weird and creepy and ugly. Like he's got nothing
tall,
going for him.
He's tall.
Literally,
which is one of the things the stripper liked about him was that he was tall.
Okay, we'll add that to the list.
And his pants come up to his nipples.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's just.
I mean, that's just the fashion of the time, man.
He's not charming. He's
weird. Like he's like the way like him and Midge talk to each other. And that's one of the things I like is that the way Midge and him talk to each other is kind of this weird, almost kooky kind of like eccentric. They're very eccentric. Yeah. And then the longer the movie goes, Jimmy Stewart gets less eccentric and more just creepy.
Yeah.
But Kim, incredible. I was say really good performance because at first I did peg her as just in that first half I just peg her as being like, she's just talking like in that way that old actresses talk in a way that's super,
she's not doing like
unrealistic or just doesn't feel like a real person talking, and it's just like, oh, this is how I perform, like more theatrical.
Yeah.
And then when you get to that halfway point and then it's like, oh wow, that actually is a really good performance because she's showing two totally different sides of the same coin, Jason.
Hey, he did it.
Catching on.
Just walk right into that one. So yeah, for totally different reasons, great performances by both. Again, Cary Grant probably would have been. He wouldn't have been better for it, but he definitely would have. It would have at least you would have believed that he could pull these girls.
Right.
Well,
the next year was the year that North by Northwest came out. Where
he came out with that the next year.
Oh, Alfred Hitchcock had a run.
How long did it take to make movies?
They didn't take that long back then. I don't know how long North by Northwest took, but
North by Northwest is much more epic.
Well, that's very un-Hitchcocky because most Hitchcock movies are very small in scale and in terms of their scope. but North by Northwest is his largest one. But that's also an older man with, although Eva Marie Saint says she's 26 in North by Northwest, and she's clearly in her 30s. But there's also an age gap there. But yeah, he's very charming in that, whereas this not so much. But we got to move along with the plot. Jason, so we go. I'll have you start this. You can give your thoughts on Kim Novak and they fall in love, or seemingly fall in love, and it leads to going to this mission in this mission in San Francisco, or outside of San Francisco, where apparently Kim Novak is being possessed by a dead relative from like 100 years ago, and it's bringing her back to this tower, this mission church that's got like this tower, and Kim Novak keeps having these episodes where she's like, I'm being possessed, or like something's happening, like, where are you now? Where are you now? And Jimmy Stewart keeps saying like, where are you now? And then she's in and out of consciousness, and eventually it leads to her climbing this tower, where Jimmy Stewart is suffering an attack of vertigo, and his acrophobia is kicking in, and he can't follow her to the top of the tower, and she runs all the way up and then comes crashing down onto the roof below. And that is the shock. The first shock of the movie is, oh, wow, this main character he's been following for half the movie is now dead. And that leads us into the second half of the movie. Jason, your thoughts on Kim Novak and this whole crescendo that it's leading to only halfway through the movie?
I was so thrown off. I was like I had to actually pause it and see what point in the movie I was at. And I was like, wait, I'm only halfway, and the main character or the co-character is just committed suicide. So I was extremely thrown off by that. But that build up to that was a lot of fun, because I think during that middle of the movie right there, you're figuring out with the story, like all the kind of the iconic places that they keep going to in San Francisco. I had to write a Legion of Honor Art Museum, and then they go to the Fort Point thing, and then it's the Muir Woods and the Redwood Forest, and then it's that Cypress Point, is where that church is. So they're like hitting up all of these very iconic, San Francisco kind of areas, which is not that far away from me. So I was like, man, I want to do like a Vertigo like field trip. Go around and go to all these places. Yeah.
You can hear James Franco in the background going, Caesar!
It is funny though, because I did when I went to San Francisco back in September of last year, almost a year ago now. And I went to two places. I mean, they're just like some of the places that they drive around, but two places in the movie, the woods. And we went to when they're walking by, it's like there's like this little pond, and there's this giant building. I forget if it's an art. I forget what the building is. Right. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've been there. I
was gonna say it's very iconic, and the name of it.
But it looks the same. That part of San Francisco looks the same.
Looks exactly
cool. Minus all the homeless people now.
But no, that was such a cool part, because you were actually starting to be like invested in the almost supernatural aspect of this. You're like, she is really getting possessed, I guess, by the great grandmother or great granddaughter or something like that. It was a little confusing, because they lay out everything, I guess, in that book scene, and like she visits some guy at a bookstore, and he pretty much just exposition dumps everything. Like right there, you figure out everything about the past, and then the necklace, the pose, the picture, and everything like that. And oh my God, how creepy was Midge painting the picture of her on the body of if I was Jimmy, which
they're both creeps.
Yeah, it's like she's just as creepy as he is. I was like, okay, you guys are made for each other. But that just reminded me of another point in this movie. How many first names does he have in this movie? John, Jimmy, Scotty. They start calling him Scotty halfway through the movie, and I'm like, who the fuck is Scotty? And then he explains it later that some people call him Scotty. I'm like, oh my God. But it's like Jimmy, John, and some other J name, that three they call him, and then Scotty on top of that.
So but all my friends call me Nickel.
Cue up. Scotty doesn't know. Scotty.
So real quick,
but I was surprised at how like much I believed her in the whole story of the supernatural thing by the end of it. When she jumps out the window, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what this movie is about. This possessed woman jumping off. We're getting like little exorcist levels right here. But it's interesting now the twist that the movie takes after that. So I was so invested and along for the ride at that point in the movie, and I really liked how they, once again, like how it all unfolded, and especially in all those iconic San Francisco scenes. So yeah, no, that was a very cool point in the movie.
You know what it reminds me of is it reminds me of in Psycho, how it's like you're like Janet Leigh is your main character, and then it's like no, she's not, and it's so abrupt. And I think Psycho would have been what, Mav, 1 to 2 years before this one.
Psycho came out after this movie.
Or
So
no, Psycho came after.
came out
Yeah.
in 60.
Yes, sorry. Which is always surprising to me because this one's in color, but yeah, no, it's very cool how he plays with convention like that, and it also reminds me of Full Metal Jacket, how it's like Pyle and Joker are your characters, and then Pyle commits suicide or dies by suicide,
very quickly.
An hour and 5 minutes into the film. So yeah, I love the way he plays with convention, and like you were talking about, Mav, like how he was able to put a little more seldomly, but like, characters of color or gay characters pretty frequently in his films in these very, not in the same way that he had to work around the system, but he was constantly playing with convention or kind of playing around with what was allowed, quote unquote. And in this way, I feel like he did that with this and with Psycho. I mean, he does it so much with this film, but yeah, that feels, even in my mind, seeing it as a kid for the first time, I remember for so long that the scene you just described is the end of the movie, and it's not. It's the midpoint. It's so cool.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach. What are that point of the movie?
Mhm.
We then, there's a trial that makes no sense. They do a trial on site.
So it's not a trial. It has another name. It's basically like a trial before a trial.
Sound like they grabbed like 10 random dudes outside, like, hey, here, come and be part of this.
An inquest
On site. It's the site of the death, which is, I'm like, is that ever done? I don't watch enough cop shows to know whether or not that.
And then once again, what was the time frame? When was her death to when that court actually started? You don't really know how long that was. That was the next day or a year later?
Procedurally, I feel like it has some level of realism. And I think that the reason why it's done the way it is because he is an officer. I mean, it's not good, but I think it's because it's like an officer was the only witness to somebody's death who is clearly mentally disturbed, so they don't have to go through maybe the same process as if it was just like a crime happened by two civilians. Is kind of my understanding of it. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no. When I looked it up earlier, it said that they have an inquest, and an inquest is, by definition, a judicial inquiry to ascertain the facts relating to an incident such as death. So it's if they thought it would basically it's a pre-trial where if they declared that he had reasonable involvement, then they would go to trial.
But it still doesn't make any sense why they would do it at the scene. It's like they don't do that. Like they didn't go to 9/11 and like at the memorial site. They're like, all right, guys, let's do let's talk about these terrorists.
Sit down.
But that was different though, Mav. That was different than this.
Anyway,
I did like the judge a lot. The actor who played the judge right there. I felt like
that guy's just roasting Jimmy Stewart, just being like, well, this piece of
shit left and right and just moving the thing along.
Don't take that into account.
Yeah. Apparently, he says he has vertigo now. This is the second person that's died on his watch. Well, you guys believe it if you want.
Damn. The judge is awesome.
Yeah. To your point, Jason, the time jump, because after that, they say, okay, well, like, we don't think Jimmy Stewart's at fault at all here. And then he doesn't say anything, and he is institutionalized.
Mm-hmm. Dude, yeah, the red lights and that flashing, that crazy kind of scene with him. I think it's right from there, and the next scene is institutionalized. But yeah, it has this very crazy, trippy scene once again, like almost the intro.
Yeah, the drug trip of a scene that's got cartoon drawing.
Yes,
and transitions to like his head flying through this.
It feels like Batman, like or
yes,
something like that.
The 58.
Yes,
Batman.
Yeah. It feels like Batman, like 66 or Batman 60s era. Like they took
50,
I think this is like the first movie to do that. Maybe not. I don't know enough.
Yeah,
about
no,
it.
I'm trying to remember the exact name of it, but yeah, it was the first movie that did something to that. Well, it was the first movie that you said earlier. It was the first movie to do that. The famous shot that Spielberg did in Jaws, that tracks the camera physically moves in while it's zooming out. But yeah, that drug trip scene is pretty wild, and I do like the silhouette that's following. That is then the cover on the poster.
I've got something I got to mention and jump in right here. So when I was a kid, I went to Universal Studios and they had the Alfred Hitchcock experience. And it was like this, there were rides, but it was mostly like you walking through rooms and had different parts of the movies. And it was almost like a museum, but it had some things that from each movie. And I think it might have been Vertigo, but or maybe it's a different one where Alfred Hitchcock designed a way of filming where you were on a chair, a flat chair, almost like a hospital bed. And they had the camera above you, and then they were able to make the camera like something almost like a green screen below. And that's how they had filmed so much of Alfred Hitchcock, people like falling. They were really just in this chair while everything was moving. And that scene right there made me realize that maybe that was like I was in the Vertigo room and I got to sit in that chair and have a camera show it. And then I walked out and it showed me like falling off this building or something like that. But that could have been from another Hitchcock movie. I don't remember, but yeah, you guys can probably help me out with that. But if there is any other classic falling scenes in Hitchcock way,
maybe Rear Window.
Rear Windows of the falling scene.
So cool, Jason.
Sabotage has a falling scene. North by Northwest has a falling scene. But that is a nice tidbit, Jason, because that is very much this movie and then Rear Window. But I think this movie definitely is more so because that silhouette comes back later at the end of the movie. That silhouette comes back.
But I had not thought about that Hitchcock experience at Universal until I saw that moment. I was like, oh yeah, I did that. I was that falling guy once. Yeah.
Wow.
So the doctor says 6 months. She's like, Midge is there. And she's like, how long is it going to take him to snap out of this funk? And he's like, 6 months to a year. I'm like, wow, doc, I like that. He just has 6 months to a year. He'll be out of it. It's like, okay. Like once we do it, he'll be fine in 6 months to a year.
Midge, sorry, go ahead. Midge coming in and actually saying, I know what it is. He's in love with her still. That's what's wrong with him. Yeah. You know, she has to like do this little kidney jab little thing. I'm like, Midge, get the fuck out of here, you jealous. Still in love with him, or he's still in love with her and like stomps off. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so he's kind of wandering around, and then this woman that looks eerily similar to The Departed, to Kim Novak's character. Kim Novak comes back and she's this brunette, talks completely differently. It's a completely different style of woman. Remy, you watch the movie for the first time, and Kim Novak being that blonde bombshell, very ethereal type of character. And then she comes back as this like sassy, takes no bullshit character. Your thoughts on that transition? Because this character is not supposed to be the dead wife. This is supposed to be, this is some other woman that just looks
Judy,
like...
Right? Judy?
Her. Yeah, Judy. Thank you.
Right. Well, I don't know if it's an important detail, but he starts going back to all the places that he used to see Madeline, and like the places that he like was with her, or he like tracked her, and he keeps on seeing women that he thinks he kind of like gets these flashes of seeing other blonde girls and being like, that looks like her. That looks like her. And so he keeps having these moments until he finds a girl, or then he sees this girl that looks exactly like her. And I actually couldn't tell. I was like, is that her? Is that the same actress?
First time I watched the movie, same thing.
I couldn't quite figure out. I was like, it looks a lot like her. But I think she's actually kind of hotter. When she goes brown, I mean, like the classic, red lipstick, like shock blonde hair is great. But then she comes back into that, and then I was like, I don't know. She looks, as just different enough to where
you're like, let me ask my boner here which one he prefers.
Okay. It was more of a chub. All right, realistically, it was more of a chub. So jokes at home. I was not aroused at all. Okay.
You hear that, honey?
Judy, totally different, and I'm curious because it is one of those things where he's like almost barging in. We're like, you got to talk to me. I just need to talk to you.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they just talk outside of her room? Why did they have to talk inside the room? Well, she could have been like, you know what? It's fine. Here, let me shut my door behind you. I'll talk to you safely out here.
That goes back to the fact that when she falls into the ocean, when she falls into the bay, and then she awakens naked with no clothes on in his apartment complex. And she's just like, oh my God, you saved me. And this is one of those things that I was like, as a kid, you watch these old movies and dudes do things like this, and you're just like, oh, he saved her. Like that might.
How nice! He took off her wet clothes,
dried her hair. Said he dried her hair. Yeah, Zach.
White knight.
Zach, go ahead.
No, I don't have any additional thoughts. No, I agree. I picked up on all those weird things too, and I feel like it's intentional. I mean, it's like it is a different era, but like a lot of the weird stuff that you're talking about, Remy, or that you just mentioned, Mav, it's not normal to have like, you know, save somebody and have them awake naked. Like, and it's not normal he doesn't need to come into her apartment. He's so imposing. And yeah, but I don't have much to add. No, keep going.
I took it as its normal man thing in the 50s to do. Like, that's what I took it as. Like, this is what men do. We walk into women's apartments and strip them naked.
I would buy, like, if it was a small town and it was like, oh, Farmer Bill, like someone like,
oh yeah, that's Sydney's cousin. I know him.
Yeah, like it might work in that context, but in this, I was just like, unless it was, maybe it's just like the white dudes that ran all the studios and like directed every movie and acted in every movie. It was all white guys. And like maybe them like, guys, if we put in the movies that it's totally cool. we
gotta make this happen.
Wake up. No one will say that it was weird because they have it in movies.
I was getting like Barbie vibes, like the men that don't I just have to be a man and I can get the job? You know?
Oh God. Yeah, creepy. I definitely take it as him being creepy from the get-go. The taking of the clothes off. Like he didn't even have the decency to put her in a freaking robe. He could have like put her in a robe somewhere, but no, she's just straight up naked in his bed. And he's like having a conversation with her. It's no big deal. Fast forward to Judy. Barge is basically forcing his way in, and she's like reluctantly allowing it, but like, and she's doing a really good job of like selling it. And then, the weirdness of that scene is basically kind of like the fuse where it's just it's fucking weirder and weirder after that.
Like the tip of the iceberg right there.
Yeah. And because then it's revealed in that moment, oh, this is the same girl. She played a decoy. She basically lured him through all this fake acting with the fake fainting and the fake possession and got him bought into this story. And then like they both fell in love with each other. That part of it's real. But then she and she was supposed to, well, I guess it's kind of like, so we figure out kind of what's going on after, and this is now a part where I have more questions.
But tell us though what's happening after. Just take us.
So she is an accomplice to the murder of Gavin, the real Madeline's husband. His friend that hires him to track his wife he hires him to track Judy, this real Judy woman, who's playing the role of his wife, so he can murder his wife. And so she runs up that staircase in the bell tower. He throws off the broken neck dead body of his wife he's waiting with up there, throws her off, and then everybody buys it as that is his real wife that just killed herself. And she looks enough like his original wife to where Jimmy is basically the alibi. Jimmy plays the alibi, so he can get away with this.
Right.
But it's not really explained why he couldn't just have left his wife. Now it is implied and kind of said that Gavin is with Judy at this time. Like she's his mistress. And so he's leaving his wife for her, but not just leaving. He, for some reason, feels the need to murder his wife to get away with this. And it can't be a life insurance policy thing because he's a shipbuilder. He's a successful man. Mm-hmm. So is there an explanation that actually makes sense as to why Gavin felt the need to actually murder his wife and not just leave her and gallivant to Europe by himself or with this girl?
Maybe his wife was a fucking bitch. Maybe he didn't like his wife. Maybe his wife cheated on him. I don't know, but people do hire people to murder. Like how many of these idiots have gotten busted hiring someone on Craigslist to murder their spouse? Yeah, why don't they just leave their spouse? I don't know. Sorry, Zach.
I know. I think you broke it down really well, Rem. I mean, but I don't know. I feel like there's something more sinister at play. Like, because the thing that strikes me is his wife that he does kill. It's she still was having these like psychotic episodes, essentially, right?
I don't think that's ever.
That's what I got it. That's what I took it as, is like the Judy was basing the Madeline that she was playing off what the wife was really like. That the wife was acting like that.
Yes, that's what I thought too. So to me, that doesn't explain anything, but I'm like, there's something more sinister at play. Like, because like you said, he doesn't need a life insurance payout, but we don't know what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe I don't want to say that she was like terrorizing him or something, but like it doesn't totally sanitize everything to where it's like, oh, he just wanted to, I don't know, but
it's really it's my main gripe with the movie is just, it's a really important, like it's to get to the point when you're trying to make this, so a grounded, like real character sort of movie, get to the point where you go through this whole crazy process of getting your friend to track a fake wife, to murder your wife, to then like leave. It's so extreme that it feels like it's too shallow of a non-explanation as to why he didn't just leave his wife.
The only thing that I justified that with is who's explaining that. We're getting this as she's writing the note to Jimmy, I think, sitting in her room, and the narration is her own voice. And that's when we even get the flashback of actually them upstairs in the bell tower. It's all through her. Does she know what his real intentions were? Would it be weird if she was sitting there telling Jimmy in a note why Gavin wanted to murder her wife or his wife? Like that's information that she wouldn't be portraying to him or even talking about. So we should have gotten that from Gavin at some point, or from someone else somewhere. But in that scene, that person, I don't think had that information. That's only what I justified it at. But yep, that was the moment that I started hating her as a character, because she was essentially a seductress, a temptress, what's the word of succubus, and deceiving him the entire time. I mean, it was like this Gavin is like feeding her information on how to seduce him the best. Like what kind of things would he like? And then
Gavin's like, listen, like Maverick Stripper, I know what Jimmy is doing.
Yeah, and it's like right then it came crashing down on me of like how horrible of a person she was. And so it was crazy how quickly I was like all team Judy and Jimmy, like riding off into the sunset together, finding it out, and then going. And I mean, of course, he's already going really weird there. I think at that point, making her dye her hair and the dresses. Has that happened at that point yet? Yeah, I think
no,
so.
That's the next sequence of events, is that she's writing this letter going to be like, oh, I'm going to leave him, and then she tears up her confession to being accomplice to a murder, and just throws it in the trash can as if obsessive Jimmy Stewart wouldn't come in and be like,
I thought about that too.
Anyway,
one other thing I want to poke a hole at though with that one is the bell tower thing. So when does he actually murder his wife, break her neck?
It just says like later. Jimmy Stewart says that it was just beforehand, but it's not specified as to how long.
So he dragged her body all the way up those stairs, in
the middle of the day.
He might have. He might have broke her neck, brought her up to the tower.
Yeah, that's what
and then did a little neck snap ninja move up there, and then just.
Yeah,
I think the movies have made that very easy for anyone to do, but I think it's very hard to break something like that. So yes, another little plot hole right there. I know I was thrown off by that though, but I mean, it's like I was so invested, and then I'm like, when glaring plot holes like that happen, it takes me out of it, a little bit too much, and that scene did it for me. But please continue.
Well, I feel like it's intentional that way though. Like I do think that it's hard, like with these great filmmakers like Hitchcock or Kubrick or whatever. It's like every mistake is like somehow chalked up to like intentional, and they're trying to fuck with you. But then again, it's like not everything is this perfect bow. But I do feel like it being the logistics of how he killed her, kind of intention. Like there's a lot of vagary in this movie that I just feel like is intentional for how well written it is. But back to the part where we were at, where it's like where she tears up her confession. It is that scene, right, where she decides to dye her hair and kind of resurrect his image.
Well, she doesn't dye. She does not dye her hair out of her own will. That's part of the greatness of the following sequences.
Yeah, do you want to take us through that? That is
The first half to 2/3 of this movie to me is kind of just watching Jimmy Stewart follow her around San Francisco isn't all that. It's interesting, but if you know the twist, to me, it's kind of like The Sixth Sense, where once you know the twist, it makes that first part not as interesting because you're just waiting for the twist to happen. But the last third of this movie to me is riveting because once he comes across Judy and she writes the note and she's like, "Oh, I'm just going to run away," why she stays in San Francisco in the first place. It's like, you idiot. You should have gotten out of Dodge. But no, like she then she agrees to go date Jimmy Stewart, and Jimmy Stewart slowly is wanting her and manipulating her and forcing her to change her look to go from this very different looking Judy to looking exactly and wearing the exact same dresses that he goes to these stores and they show dresses and he's like, no, that's not the right one, not the right one. He only wants her to look exactly like Madeline, this image in his head of Madeline, and he's just obsessed with this dead woman character in his mind. And it's so uncomfortable watching him do all like these different techniques. And then he gets to the part of which he says, everything's perfect about you except your hair. And that's when he's like, please, Judy. And then it gets even more uncomfortable because then when she dyes her hair, he comes back and he's like, it's still not right. Like, why isn't it like buttoned up in the back, tied in the back the way that that I wanted you to do it? He's like, they couldn't get it done. Like, please do it. And then it's the moment, and it's literally the way Hitchcock does it is literally made to make it look like an orgasm because when she finally puts the hair the exact same way Madeline had it, the music just blasts, and he has the look in his eyes, and she's in this like cone of like flickering
the filter on the screen.
And it's like he just came for the first time in a year. That's a wild, like, just that whole part is so uncomfortable. Anyone have any?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. Let's let that one lie. Yeah.
I mean, you did sum up basically everything up until the crescendo, the final finale of this movie. Which is so then he sees the moment he's taking her through these dates, getting her to look the same way, and then he gets her to
lots of aggressive kissing.
She's just desperately hoping that he like truly snaps into love with her instead of loving the image of her, and then he realizes because she wears the same necklace pendant. From the original wife, or I think it's the original wife's, or just her costume.
Great grandmother.
Oh, it is the great, because it's from the portrait. So it is the original. Yeah. And then he decides he's going to kill her. Mm-hmm. Right. He's physically dragging her back up into that tower.
Right. His whole character arc is basically retracing his steps of everywhere they used to be, the same places they used to go. And so him following this final fantasy of like the last time he saw Madeline, it's if this movie was uncensored, because back then the good guys had to win, the bad guys had to lose. You could not have Jimmy Stewart actually be like, I'm going to kill you. And then he gets away with it. In fact, part of this movie is Gavin disappears. Gavin, last we see him is at what's the name of the thing?
Inquiry.
The Inquiry.
Yeah, the Inquiry.
He says, take care, chum. And then he says, I'm going off to Europe. And that's the last we see of him. They had to film a scene where on the radio, after the end of the movie, it would have been that Jimmy Stewart was hanging out with Midge. And on the radio, it's like, we just found the wife killer on the loose. And that was going to be the end of the movie because that had to appease the code of the movie industry back then. So they filmed that and then never used it. But you couldn't even have that. And maybe that's why there's that ambiguity of couldn't go too hard in the paint with what Gavin did or how he set things up. Because if you did, then you would have had to include this stupid ass scene where it's like, when the bad guy was caught, don't you worry, that guy was caught. And then it would have ruined the end image of the movie, which is Jimmy Stewart standing on the precipice of this tower because he drags her to the top of the tower
It's so unsettling and creepy.
Oh yeah, like he is in murder mode. Like,
well, and so what
he is
I took away from it is, I think it was the doctor in the very beginning, or maybe Midge, but they said the only reason or only way you're going to cure this vertigo is having another emotional,
Yes.
an emotional something or other. I think I wrote it down.
Traumatic emotional event or something like that.
Exactly. So I think he was trying to create that by bringing her up there, to create a dramatic emotional event.
I agree.
To kind of snap him out of it.
That's my interpretation as well.
Yeah, no, I think well, he literally says when they're driving there and she's starting to realize where they're going, and he's like got this crazy look in his eye. He says something to the extent of like, "This is the final piece for both of us," or he says, something alluding to that.
Yeah.
He's like, what I am about to do will be puzzled over and studied for years, detective. Become Vertigo. What's in the mission? Sorry, go ahead.
So he's having it out with her, and then just a great Hitchcockian, just a dark, like very horror-like, a dark, shadowy image just goes straight up. They're in the tower, and right where like you would come up, this like shadowy image comes up, and she freaks her out, and she turns and like just falls, just falls out of the opening, dies and crashes onto the roof below. And I love the image of Jimmy Stewart standing there, assuming the exact position of the silhouette from the dream sequence. Great touch. Very like, when I was a kid and saw that ending, I was like, what?
Yeah.
It ends like that? You can't end a movie like that.
I mean, curing his vertigo too, him looking right down and not getting the camera thing where it used to come up every single time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's so many touches like that where it's like, if you think about it, you're just kind of like, oh, that is different, but it does wash over you. And you're just kind of, I mean, how long is a movie? Like 95 minutes? It's
2 hours.
Yeah, it's just over 2.
Right. Yeah. I love it. It's so like, because it doesn't leave you cold. It does leave you cold, but it doesn't leave you like, it just doesn't give you that bad guys are defeated thing, because the quote unquote good guy is fully a villain. He's a murderous villain by the end. I don't know.
When he was dragging her up there, I was hoping that they were just going to both fall off and die. They were going to struggle and then just both go over. Yeah. And then I was going to be like, sick. Like, that is a fine way for this movie to end. But then when she accidentally dies, I mean, I'm left with the feeling that he probably is still going to go to jail, because the inquiry was already pretty harsh on him of being like, it's a little bit weird that this girl died and like on your watch and you should have been there to stop it. So then if he's there and another girl dies in the exact same way at the exact same place. It's
not another girl, the same girl. It's double jeopardy, dude.
I'll take same murder for 500, Alex.
Well, in this case, you have the nun as a witness.
Is a witness.
The nun comes up and sees that she falls off on her own body.
Yeah, but it's like, but they're up there at the middle of the night or in the morning, and it's just like, you guys are up here at a weird time and seem to be having an argument, and then she just falls off to the death.
But then you're going to have, it's all going to come out that Gavin murdered his wife, and that this woman
can any of that be proven?
Well, let's see. Can it be proven that? Well, let's see. They're going to raid Gavin's home. They're going to.
That's the thing.
It's going to be just the word of old Jimmy, and he's a crazy bastard at this point.
Again, I'm holding on to hope that Jimmy's character goes to jail for the rest of his life for this movie. But
I don't agree necessarily, because there's the witness of the nun, but
he's still like, he pulled her up and they're arguing. Right. Like, they're arguing at this, like, in here, and then she falls off.
The nun came up there because she heard yelling and loud noises and things like that.
And then I love that the nun's just blank slate, just like, ding, ding.
Well, that's the murder that's happened on
Sinners.
Like,
Sinners deserved it. Yeah.
Literally seen out of
I'm surprised.
2 dead bodies, everything's fine.
I'm surprised that you guys realized that she fell. I did not know if she was pushed, if she tripped, or if she jumped. I was so confused on which one. I had to actually do like research afterwards, that she actually like was scared and fell backwards. Like, I thought that she jumped, that she was like, so like, I don't know if she thought that was the real Madeline or Gavin or something, that she just turns around and just ran off the edge or something like that, or the fact that she just fell backwards was not so apparent, to me. But that was another really weird
I
twist.
guess I've seen Tarzan. It's like, did Clayton really hang himself, or did Tarzan? Clayton.
There is going back to the censorship of the time. If left to uncensored devices, would the ending have been Jimmy Stewart pushing her, and then assuming that then he takes the same silhouette image and curing his acrophobia that way? Where the main aspect of the movie is that he cured his acrophobia by killing her, and that could have been we don't know, but you can't end a movie like that back then. So who knows what the true ending would have been if it was uncensored.
That's so interesting to be like a writer, director, all this, and have to change your plot to do to the times of what you could actually have a movie that people see. You can't do your own creative vision. You have to somehow cater it to the guidelines of that day and age.
But my thing is on it is obviously there are limitations to that. If you can't have anything suggestive in your film, but it's I feel like limitations are what make, and this maybe is the last thing I have to say, but limitations are kind of what make the best art. We were talking about some of the Star Wars shows that are on now, and obviously those have limitations as well, or requirements. But look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, look at Star Wars 1977, look at Raiders, look at E.T., and the limitations were more technologically then, right, instead of censored. But or look at the Beatles versus now, or whatever, just limitations on technology and what is at your disposal is sometimes what makes the greatest art. And I do think that in this case, I don't know what a different cut of Vertigo would look like, but I like that he is not wholly responsible. But as you pointed out, Remy, there was an argument. That's why the nun was coming up, so it's he really is at the end of the day. But I don't know. I like it. I think that anyway, that's all. I think limitations are what can sometimes make the greatest art what it is. But
I agree. There is. I'm not saying that I would prefer it if the ending was him shoving her or whatever. I like the ending the way it is. And yes, limitations definitely. That is part of. You look at what happens without. I mean, again, more of a budgetary thing than a censorship issue. But yeah, we look at Star Wars and the amount of struggle it was to make that first movie. And it's a masterpiece. And then with unlimited resources, you get the prequels and much less effective films. What would Hitchcock just have been a slasher, just gore fest type of director if he didn't have to constantly be fighting? Orson Welles had to struggle with almost all of his movies to make them the way that he wanted. He would even film at night so that these studio executives wouldn't show up. He would film at 2:00 in the morning, being like, "Hey, won't show up and bother me on my film set." So it is cool, and I really do appreciate Hitchcock and his vision. And I do think the movie's fine the way it is, generally speaking. But I do, in the back of my mind, I'm always wondering what would it have been like if he could have done it the way he wanted. And maybe, would it have been a gratuitous nonsense where it's just knowing how corny Hitchcock was, just tits everywhere and blood everywhere. Who knows what it would have been like? But obviously, still the master of suspense.
One last point I want to add real quick before I forget is I guess picked the wrong profession because a retired detective has unlimited money, it seems like. No problem with money this entire movie. He is just new dresses, new hair, out to dinner every night. We're going to go to, it's constant, living in hotels and all this sort of stuff. So I need to quit my job, become a detective, and retire on that.
They never showed the scene where they cut off the scenes before Jimmy Stewart was you got this?
Yeah.
It reminded me, Jason, of the episode in Boondocks of when Grandpa falls in love with a stripper or a prostitute, a sex worker, and he falls in love with her, and he's just and he thinks that she's just in love with him, and so he's spending all this crazy money on shopping sprees and stuff.
Yeah,
maybe it's still the money. He's still living off the money that all his friends give him to pay Potter or whatever, at the end.
This is actually the sequel to It's a Wonderful Life.
I never realized I had so many friends. Hey, before I go, have you guys heard the Dana Carvey bit of it's this bit of Katharine Hepburn giving him a blowjob in the back of a car. Oh,
Mimi
it's so
was
funny.
just referring to this before you got on.
It's so
He
good.
was just referring to this.
Yeah, he's like, go slowly. Yeah. Well, don't look at it. Yeah, okay. Well, don't touch it. Okay, well, now look away. Well, now look back at it. Okay. Well, and then Dana Carvey also has this other bit of Jimmy Stewart ordering Jack in the Box at a drive-thru. He's like, well, what do you mean with cheese? It's so great.
Dana Carvey, oh, that's great.
Where you see here, Mr. Potter, there are good people in this town, and a little spider like you has no business telling people where to live.
Good one.
Yo, frustrated old man.
Final thoughts and ratings.
Final thoughts and impressions.
Final thoughts and impressions.
You must give your final thoughts in your Jimmy Stewart voice. Yeah.
I'm not even going to try. I don't think I can do that.
Okay, what is this thing? What is this thing that Hitchcock and Stewart do? You know, it'll like push in and it'll make his eyes really big and it'll kind of like, I don't know. I don't know.
Everything's like, Hitchcock with his moments was very much get everything to the most intense suspense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
He loves, having the slow, easy, slow ratcheting up of intensity, but then also, the shot that is on the face and that was exactly how. And Cary Grant wasn't nearly as that kind of actor the way that Jimmy Stewart was. But yes, final thoughts and ratings. Let's start with Barata, since this is your movie.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. I do think I think the imperfections are what make it kind of what I love. It's interesting. It's like I did not expect to appreciate North by Northwest as much as I did. I knew it would be great. I still think this is my favorite just because I think it sits outside of his catalog a little bit somehow. But it's a 10 out of 10 for me, even with the imperfections. I kind of think that's what makes it what it is. It's so well acted. Kim Novak, I really, 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 really appreciated her performance a lot. And I love talking about it with you guys. It was great. I'm glad that you guys didn't hate it. I was not knowing what I was coming into. So I loved it. I loved hearing your guys' thoughts on it.
Jason?
I had a hard time with this. Like, as today I was just trying to think of like what I would sum this up as and give it a rating. I mean, just watching it one time, I feel like I don't get enough be able to get this rating on it. And I think about like that common saying where you say you're a psychopath if you think you're going to watch or do the same action and get a different result. And as I sometimes think about that with movies, it's like, am I going to just keep watching this and get different results out of it? Or I'm going to try to find other things. So I feel like I was way too obsessed with her. Like afterwards, I read some reviews and things of this movie and everyone kept talking about him. Like, I think this is a good one. It says it's a story of a man who develops a romantic obsession with the image of this woman, where it's all about him, where I was thinking it was just more about her. Like, I was more coming from her aspect and the seduction and the deception and that whole role of her more than him. And so I think I need to rewatch it and just like more focus on him, because I went from like being, like I said, so on her team to so hating her. So she became like the main focus of it for me. So in that aspect, I mean, it was great. I walk away with it thinking a lot. And when the next day in the shower, if you're still thinking about the movie, that means it was a good one in my opinion, but nothing 10 out of 10 though. I don't think I'd rank it that high. Maybe on multiple viewings I will, but yeah, a solid 8 I'd give it. And I love being pushed out of my comfort zone as far as movies and things. I feel like with my job and my life, I just go towards something that's very just dumb, as you guys like to put it.
Not me, Jason. I like a lot of the stuff you do.
Are easy for my mind to zone out to. And so it is good to be challenged a little bit on some movies. And this was a good one. So a solid 8 is what I'll walk away with from now.
So tonight, Jason, you're going to be like, Citizen Kane or more reruns of Bluey?
No, I've got Ahsoka to watch, which I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you're saying 8 out of 10?
8.5 out of 10.
Nice.
Almost a 9. I just think that like I can never.
Wait, Mr. Hater McGillicuddy's giving it an 8.5 out of 10.
I love this.
Well, because it's not a horror movie; it's a thriller mystery. We get hired.
I don't like how it ends, but I don't necessarily think it's.
Come on, Remy, go 9. Go 9. Go 9 just for me.
I like my half-point scoring system, so I stick with my 8.5. But it's just I do think the Gavin not reasons but motives are just so unclear that it does bother me a little bit. I think it's like just the final piece of the movie that's missing, and it didn't need to be. I think Alfred's definitely capable of writing at least a couple reasons. I understand purposeful ambiguity. I think it's a case by case basis of when it's useful and like mysterious in more of a Shining sort of way, or versus in a like this is grounded. And I do like that at the very beginning of the movie, I was like, possession story seemed so out of Hitchcock style that I was like, did he really make a movie about a girl that's possessed by a dead person? I was like, that would be nuts. And then it obviously is not the case, but I like that that's like leading you in. It's like, oh, it actually might be. That being said, a final thought I did have was about Hitchcock. We don't need to dwell on this very long, but what would Alfred Hitchcock be like if he did? And you touched on this earlier. I'm curious, what would Hitchcock be like if he made movies right now? If he was alive, you take the same sort of person, you put him in today's day. Would his movies be just way more graphic? Would they be, more horror, like because he can? Would he be still in the thriller range? And I think the person that's like, I was trying to think of who is the director right now that's closest to Hitchcock. There really isn't one. But if you had to be like, oh, this guy is trying to be Hitchcock, you would say,
I'm interested.
M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong.
I would never ever say they're both their names in the same sentence.
No, I mean that's the thing.
He's
the Dollar Tree knockoff of Hitchcock. But in the attempt of being like psychological
100%.
thriller, mystery, horror-ish, he's the closest person that's tried to do things like that. But there is nobody else. Denis Villeneuve has done some thriller, but he does not nearly dive into the psychological.
I'd say
thriller.
Scorsese.
Really? I feel like their styles are
because
so different.
Scorsese has tried to do horror in like Cape Fear and Shutter Island, and I feel like, and also too like how you were saying, like North by Northwest is more of an epic movie. Like, I don't know. I mean, and also I would probably just say him because he comes from that era the most, and he's still making films. It's so impossible to imagine what Hitchcock would, because Hitchcock invented like genre types essentially. So what he would be making now, but it's kind of like they say like, J.J. Abrams is like kind of Spielberg, and who is the director? Nolan is sort of like the Kubrick. You know, it's like the Hitchcock of now. I like your Shyamalan. I like that take, but somebody who actually measures up in terms of their catalog. And I think Scorsese is much more varied than people give him credit for, is all.
Well, I think that's what Remy was saying. Remy wasn't trying to compare catalogs. He was just going for style. And yes, M. Night was like trying to create these intense movies with a twist that would bedazzle, which is a word I made up, bedazzle audiences. And yeah, it's he had promise. I mean, I love Unbreakable, and at Sixth Sense is a twist. I just feel like if you know the twist, the movie just is okay. And then after that, just kind of fell off. I feel bad because for me, like the movie is good. The first 2/3 it's just when you know the twist, it just takes too long for the whole stalking, following her around thing. I love the last third of this movie. For me, the movie's a 7 out of 10. Good movie, like the movie, but it's not. It wouldn't be a top 5 Hitchcock for me. And so a lot of his other movies, Monica and I watched this, and then shortly afterwards, same night, same day, we watched Rope, and I like Rope more.
Rope is incredible. Rope is so good.
Yeah,
I love Rope.
Really good, really. And that was another movie that I hated as a kid because I'm like, it's boring. It's in one room. Where's the fun? But like as an adult, the dialogue is so sharp. The performances are really excellent. Anyway, I don't want to talk about a different movie too much. But yeah, 7 out of 10. One thing I forgot to touch on from earlier was that when you said there's the motel or hotel that Madeline is staying at, and she goes up, and then he comes in, Jimmy Stewart comes in, talks to the lady that runs the place, and he's like, oh, like Madeline just came in here, or he doesn't know the name, or he doesn't say the name, and then she's like, oh, no one's upstairs, and then she's like, oh, if you want to come look, I assume she's in on it. She's in on at least this part of the ruse, which is that Gavin's paid her just to be a part of this ruse. It is not specified. That's my interpretation, but that's what I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We could see that. Yeah.
And that's last page.